I'm not hearing you real clear, Mark, so
I'll try to speak up.
explicitly.
Yes.
Well, Mark, my name is Jim Reinders, of course, and I was born in Alliance, Nebraska in 1927, which makes me 90 years old. I grew up on a farm during the Dust Bowl and during the Depression, so I consider myself part of the luckiest generation of Americans. We had it so tough growing up that everything seemed like pretty much a path in the garden after that. Some people say the greatest generation. I think all the generation of Americans are great. We were just luckier than most. So I got through high school at 16, and in 3 months I was 17, and I was at Great Lakes Naval Training Center, Great Lakes, Wisconsin, in the Navy. So I joined up as soon as I could, and my parents were very happy to see me go to the Navy because I was starting to raise too much fun around Alliance, Nebraska. So again, I was very fortunate. I got out of the service after a nice 12-month tour of the South Pacific after Harry dropped the bomb. So it was all just a pleasure cruise. And having nothing better to do when I got back to Alliance, the GI Bill was available, and being an opportunist, I jumped on the GI Bill, went to the University of Nebraska, and studied engineering. 4 years later, I had a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. That was 1950. That was also the wave of many veterans graduating, many as engineers from the various schools. So jobs were a little tight. But things loosened up because the Korean War started. So World War II was a break for me, and Korean War was another break. I was able to get a job in Houston with a company called Schlumberger, not widely known, but a successful company and well known in the oil industry. So there began a long sojourn with Schlumberger, which took me to West Texas. I got married while I was still in college, so I had a son to take care of, my son Jim. And we started out in Snyder, and later we moved to Hobbs, New Mexico, and later Big Lake, Texas, and around Midland, Texas. And gradually, with any big company, you work up the line if you're able. And I eventually found myself in Wichita, Kansas as a division engineer, and later in New Orleans, and then later in Shreveport, and later yet back in Houston, Texas. In 1973, I had the opportunity to begin working overseas. It was a little tougher life in a way. I was in Tehran for a couple of years, which a bit of a cultural shock for my wife. For the expatriate men, you deal with the same oil people that you do all over the world. So after 2 years in Tehran, we came to the best assignment we had with Schlumberger, which 7 years in London. Certainly one of the great cities of the world. And for English-speaking people, the best overseas assignment you could get. So for a change, my wife was very happy. She loved antiquing, and there are plenty of antiques around London and in England generally. So from London as a base, we got to see most of Europe on our travels. And one of the places we often visited was Stonehenge. And I became quite intrigued with that monument, and whenever people visited us in London, I'd take them out to Stonehenge, so more and more I fell in love with it. When I first went there in 1975, Stonehenge was wide open to the public. You could crawl on the stones and feel them and kind of communicate with the stones. Later, I went back there and I found it had been roped off, so people can no longer do that. The reason being the usual reason: the Americans come along with their chipping hammers and started chipping off the stone, taking it as a souvenir. So anyway, in the early 80s, my children were starting to get married and my parents were starting to get old and decrepit. And we thought we better come back to the States. So in 1981, I resigned from Schlumberger. I was 58 years old, something like that, still in pretty good health. And people started asking me, what are you going to do? You're too young to not do anything. And I said, well, I think one of the things I'll do is replicate Stonehenge and use automobiles. I'll call it Stonehenge West. So that was an idea that kept germinating in my mind. I visualized it more and more as I went along. So I came back to Houston, and it was during the height of the oil boom in the early 80s. So I soon found myself working again. I was managing an oil well service company. 1982, my father died. He had been a long-time resident of Alliance, Nebraska, lived on a farm, had lived on a farm right north of town. And when he died, the two siblings of my own, we split the inheritance up, and I took the farm. So I ended up with the farm. Anyway, during the course of the funeral, we had a going away dinner. Everybody was breaking up, going back home, and they enjoyed being together. We hadn't all been together for many years. So somebody said, why don't we get together again in 5 years and maybe do something? So I suggested at that point, why don't we do Carhenge? And I proposed what I wanted to do. Well, they jumped on that as really a great idea. So we all went back to our respective homes. And along in 86 or so, I started getting reminders from my relatives that, hey, Jim, you said in 5 years we're going to get together and we're going to do something. We're going to do Carhenge.
Hold on one sec. Let's let this big truck go by. Hold on one sec.
Yeah. So I got really serious. I had drawn up some plans, or had them drawn up for me, and got all the statistics about Stonehenge, and that's not difficult to do. Even before the days of the internet, you could find plenty of literature on Stonehenge. Been studied by many people in many different ways. So we decided on a date, and I delegated the responsibility of various things to various people. For example, my brother Leonard was in the Army Reserve, so he could have access to a 40-man tent. So he brought that to Alliance, and we set it up on my farm, had been my dad's farm. And Danny Reinders, he drove a car in from, I think, Omaha or Grand Island, and other people brought automobiles one way or the other. Somebody else was in charge of food and other amenities. So we all came together in this week and started Carhenge. The initial results were pitiful. I thought we could do this thing by hand. So the first morning out there, we had a little Subaru Japanese car, which was pretty light. And the 4 or 5 of us dug this hole, which was fairly easy digging there. And then we all got a hold of that car and was going to move it into the hole and have it stand upright. Well, that didn't work at all. That car went about 2 feet and stopped.
Hold on one sec. I got an issue. You're sitting up too much now.
Oh.
No, we're good. We're good. It's perfect.
We're okay?
Yeah. It's a complicated shot. It's quite tight, so your head bumped out a little bit. It's fine. It's all good.
So we soon realized we weren't going to get very far with Carhenge if we didn't get some mechanical help. So we kind of dispersed, and several people went this way and several went that way, and came up with a fellow that operated a backhoe. He had operated by the hour for us, so we kind of contracted him for that week. And with the backhoe, things went much, much faster. He soon had, I think, about 19 holes dug for us. He could pick up the cars with his backhoe and set them there, and we could kick in some dirt and kind of get them situated, and then he'd fill it up for us. So it went pretty rapid. Then we started running out of automobiles. But it coincidentally and fortuitously, there's a fellow south of Alliance that collected old cars. It was just something he liked to do, was buy old cars, junkers really, haul them to his yard there and store them. I can't remember his whole name. We called him Big Bob, Big Nose Bob. He's got a last name and it escapes me. Anyway, we told him we needed some cars and he was very amenable to supplying them. Not only sell them to us, if they needed, he put wheels on them and blew up the tires and brought them out to the site. So soon we had enough raw material to go ahead and get the initial circle done. Then my son-in-law, Mike Cook, was a heavy equipment operator. So he went into Alliance there and rented a forklift. He brought that out to the site and he was able to lift the horizontal cars, technically called lintels, into place. And I had another relative there that said he was a welder. Turned out he wasn't, but he welded these lintels in place. And we had it all set up. And on the 6th day, we had our dedication ceremonies. Well, we went to the tent and we had some sort of a celebration, and a windstorm came up, as it can do in the Box Butte County, and blew one of our cars, one of our lintels, off. That car happened to be called a Gremlin, made by American Motors, so it was well named. So anyway, we had our dedication, we had some events, and we were going to break a bottle of champagne over the ambulance, the major vehicle out there. And we had quite a time doing that. It turns out a bottle of champagne hit against something that's like a fender. It won't break. So we all took a shot at it, we threw at it, pitched. Anyway, finally my nephew, Danny Reinders, got a hold of it, and he managed to hit a solid part, and champagne splattered all over the place. So we felt quite good at the end of the 6 days. We had it done. Originally, Stonehenge had taken 1,600 years, so we thought with the help of a backhoe, we really knocked some time off of their work. So that's the kind of story how it got started, and then people started complaining about it being a junkyard and an eyesore and a safety hazard and blah, blah, blah. So we had quite an argument with the city and with the state about keeping Carhenge. About that time, there were 3 or 4 citizens in Alliance that had enough foresight to see there were some possibilities in having Carhenge located in Alliance. And one of them was the mayor of Alliance, Eva Knight. She had some influence. Another one was Paul Faniff, a great supporter of Carhenge. He was on the city council. And then there were some various people, and they formed an organization they called the Friends of Carhenge. And their mantra was preserve Carhenge. So everything they did was toward that end. And one of the fellows there was Dobby Lee. He was ex-mayor of Alliance and the owner of Dobby's Frontier Town, which is another good, very worthwhile attraction in Alliance. And he saw the possibility of it bringing in people, a little bit of tourism, this and that. So he started promoting it. And they had events, they had various things go on through the years. So finally it became quite popular. What else would you like to know, Mark?
So tell me about yesterday and this first experience of this solar eclipse.
Because I hadn't even heard about the eclipse until, I don't know, 18 months, 2 years ago, something like that. And Kevin Howard, the tourist director, said, "Did you know that was coming?" No, I didn't, so I thought about that a while. And of course, Kevin asked me, did you know that was going to happen when you built this? So to put him on, I said, sure, that was all part of the plan. But later I straightened him out. And of course, I had no idea. It's a happy coincidence that the eclipse fell over Carhenge. Just kind of enhanced the entire operation there.
A little bit.
So I'd never seen an eclipse before, and had it not been for Carhenge, I still would not have seen one, because I didn't think it was worth that much trouble to get to a place for a 2-minute dark out. I thought I could step out my back door at midnight, and see the same thing. Nothing. But after I saw that thing starting yesterday, evolving, the quarter moon, the half moon, and so on, I was very much impressed by it as a natural phenomenon, probably the greatest natural thing I ever saw in my life. And then it finally covered up, and the picture was exactly like it had been depicted by many artists and photographers. So I thought it was a very profound event. The way the audience kind of hushed as it approached, and then there's a little chatter, and then when the sun broke out again, that immediate second of flash, I thought the people shouted, you know, like, hey, we're not dead, the sun is coming back, we're going to see it again. And so I was very affected by that. I thought it was an extremely nice experience to kind of end up my sojourn.
Amazing. So I've seen 7 total eclipses and other iterations of solar eclipses, and I find them very profound. And I used to ask people to tell me about the profundity, and they can't do it. I mean, something this profound is indescribable. And so when I tell them, I say, well, this is why I promote them, because you have to see it. Like you said, I say, let's go outside, see it in the dark. You know, what's the big deal? And then after you see it, it's like, told you it was special.
It's a big deal. It sure is. Yeah, something I'm very happy I did not miss. Yeah,
I'm glad you saw it. I'm really glad.
I probably won't see another one, but I saw that one, and that was probably as great as any could ever be.
That was a lovely eclipse in my experience.
We had it. We had it all.
Yeah. Of course, you could come with me to to Chile, down in South America, in 18 months. There's another one down there.
I've been there.
Then you know the road. You could be my guide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I actually, one reason I didn't want to talk to you yesterday is that I don't actually think people can even begin to process how they feel about seeing that eclipse. When you see that corona, which you can't see under any other circumstances. And again, it comes back to, I actually turned the camera on myself after I talked to hundreds of people, and they were just saying beautiful, profound, amazing. And I went, tell me something deeper. I turned it on myself. Can't do it. Can't do it.
I don't know what you can say. You know, somebody might say, what do you think of the sun up? Well, normally you don't think anything about the sun up, but that's very profound. The thing that the sun comes up every day and goes down over here, a new sun every day. That's profound, only it's everyday stuff, so you don't think anything about it. But the fact that you look at the universe and you see that moon's out there going around like that, and we're going around like this, and we don't know what the sun's doing, whether it's going that way or that way, and that there's no up or down, and the whole celestial thing defies explanation. You cannot describe infinity. God-given universe that we have, where it come from, where it's going, it's beyond the imagination of man. And that's all I am, just a man. So I can't say anything really profound about it.
I hear you, brother. Me too. I've tried. I can't say anything profound about it. It is profound. I love the fact that the celestial mechanics are such that if it was a little bit more perfectly aligned, they would only last a moment, because it would come in front if it was perfectly. And I'll tell you that later one day. But it's all a little off, to a point where you get this little tiny duration, somewhere between a couple of minutes to like 7.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so it's just long enough and just farther away that like you said, I mean, if you get up every morning and watch the sunrise, it's glorious. And if you come out and see the stars, they're glorious. But people just take them for granted. But with this event that God gave us, it's like, I'm just going to give you a little teaser and then show you a little bit of my glory that you can never see. Because you take advantage, you just think everything is normal every day. those glorious sunrises. You just think they're everyday things. Well, let me show you something you can't get every day. So I can't describe the profundity of it, but I know how amazing the circumstances are.
Well, a sunrise, if it were once in your lifetime, you'd be out there gawking and taking pictures of it and trying to think of something profound to say, the sun is coming up. But like we said, it happens every day. We think it's going to happen tomorrow. So, okay, listen.
Hold on one sec. Got another big truck coming. Well, they asked me to say something about what the eclipse could teach Americans, and I'm like, I don't know. I've just seen the eclipse. It's like, I'm an eclipse fever, and but I think what you're just talking about there is kind of what it is. It's that don't take these things for granted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Try to see the glory of everything that happens every day, and maybe this would help you point it out.
That's what I think.
That you ought to see the things happening every day that are wonderful, God-given. Yeah. Now, I wish I could give you something that would really put that in stone. I got nothing.
You made Carhenge. That's good enough.
Okay.
Good enough. And you know what? I think you made Carhenge because, like you said, you might have. I mean, you're 90 years old, and I'm not saying you're dying tomorrow or anything, but we don't live that long in this experience, and you wouldn't have seen an eclipse. You built Carhenge, and that kind of set you up to come back and see one. You might have missed it. Just think about if you missed that.
That would have been a sad day to have missed it. Carhenge has been good for numerous experiences that I certainly would not have had without it. I've talked to people all over the world. Like you say, people make art out of leftovers, junk art, if you like. And it becomes a piece of Americana. And some people travel around looking at these oddities. But it's nothing that original because people have been doing that in England for a long time, making odd things beside the road. Some real characters. One of the fellows that I met because of Carhenge was a rich fellow in England.
We got 1 minute. Wrap it up. No, it's the director and me. Wrap it up. 1 minute.
He built a trebuchet. A trebuchet is something that you can toss things a long ways. And he was having a lot of fun with that. And it set me on the idea of making a trebuchet. I was going to cast a light car. I never got around to it, but it was time and expense. But Carhenge has been a continuing source of pleasure for me. The money I put into it was insignificant compared to the rewards that I got out of it. I gave it to the city. I'm happy that I did that. I wish that they have continued success with that and other things long after I'm just a memory.
I want to come in and get in my own film here.
Okay.
Get here. This is me with the man that built Carhenge.
Okay, and this is
It's a great pleasure to meet this guy.
The Jack Palance lookalike.
He's very generous. He's going blind. His eyes aren't as good as they used to be. Okay, let me see if I have any time left. It's I've got 0 minutes, but it's still recording. Well, thank you so much. That was a brilliant interview.
My pleasure.
My
Yes.
pleasure. My
Yes.
pleasure.
No, well, absolutely.
Great.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Beautiful
Yep.
words.
Kevin said to me, I said, why do you think he built it? And he goes, I think he's got a sense of humor. And I said, Kevin, I have a sense of humor. I didn't build Carhenge. And I like to build things. I have an engineering background.
Oh, yeah.
And
Well,
so it's like, it's more than that.
if you had lived in England and visited Stonehenge and became obsessed with the idea,
it would have happened.
you would have built Carhenge.
Yeah, when I went to Stonehenge, I lived in Edinburgh, Scotland for
Okay.
26 years. And I only went to Carhenge. Now I call Stonehenge Carhenge. I only went to Stonehenge one time, and it was buried off. You had to walk around the outer
Yeah.
perimeter. I could only see it from a distance. So
No, not the same.
not the same.
Not the same.
no,
Too
I was
bad.
very disappointed. So,
Yeah.
but I got a kick out of filming at Carhenge and seeing that eclipse. That was a real moment in American history.